2 young lives cut short by the man in the woods. The girls capturing their alleged killer on camera. Still, the days turn to weeks, weeks into months, months to years. No answers.
Now, the moment their families and this community have been waiting for.
And an arrest has been made.
From a sketch in every corner of town, now there is a name.
The judge signed the probable cause affidavit for the arrest of Richard Allen for 2 counts of murder.
And a face to the man accused of killing Abby and Libby.
A man police say has walked among them all these years.
Lived here and was in the community and ran around like there was nothing going on, you know? And it's kind of a slap to the face.
That's why we said never stop searching anywhere. He could be living right amongst us, hiding in plain sight. And that's what came. I want to make sure that we have everything we possibly need and more. I don't want to leave any stone unturned.
The arrest, the news these families have prayed for, now it's on to the next step.
We now move forward through the Indiana criminal justice system, allowing the system to provide its due diligence and process in providing that justice which is owed Abby and Libby, their families, in this community.
It's somewhat bittersweet, you know, knowing that while it allows us to move to the next turn or the next chapter, we still got now we got a big mountain ahead of us, and we're going to stay after it. We haven't ever given up, and you guys haven't given up on us. And we're going to keep pushing all the way.
Abby and Libby, though in death, have had a profound effect on so many of us, on how we live, and as importantly, who we all should be.
Thanks for joining us for our special on the Delphi murder arrests. Over the next 30 minutes now, we're going to be sharing an in-depth interview about the case with Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter.
We'll also hear from the girls' families about the arrest and why they feel this isn't the end, but the beginning of justice for these girls. But first, how we got to this point. It all started on February 13th, 2017, when 2 young girls went out for a walk and never came home. The next day, Valentine's Day, a grim discovery. The girls' bodies discovered in a wooded area near the bridge where they had gone the day before for a simple afternoon hike.
It was on the 15th that police revealed evidence captured on one of the girls' phones showing their suspected killer, the man in the blue jacket. 3 days later, Abby and Libby were laid to rest. A community in mourning and a community in fear.
February 22nd is when we heard their alleged killer's voice for the first time.
Down the hill. Down the hill.
With the infamous Down the Hill recording. It wasn't until July that we got our first look at their alleged killer when this sketch was released. His image everywhere you looked in the small town of Delphi and beyond.
Killer caught on camera, 2 teenage girls found dead.
That September, the girls' families took their plea for answers national by appearing on Dr. Phil. Still nothing, as the case seemed to grow cold.
Fast forward to April 22nd of 2019. That's when Indiana State Police released this updated sketch of Abby and Libby's alleged killer. A far different look from the original sketch. Investigators also released additional audio of the suspected killer.
Nearly another year passes with no new leads until December of 2021. That's when police announced a possible break, a fake social media account that communicated with Libby shortly before her death. Investigators did track down that man, and he denied any involvement and has never been charged in the case.
That all leads us to October 26th, the day police arrested 50-year-old Richard Allen. He was formally charged 2 days later with murder in the girls' deaths.
And on October 31st, the news the family and community have been waiting for nearly 6 years. An official announcement of the arrest and the murders, and new hope for justice for Abby and Libby. That announcement coming from the Indiana State Police Superintendent.
Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel sat down with Doug Carter and they talked about the scale of this investigation, the evidence that's still secret from the public, and the unexpected reaction following this arrest.
Today is not a day to celebrate, but the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and complex investigation.
Announcing an arrest in one of the most notorious murder cases in state history, that job belonged to Doug Carter, superintendent of Indiana State Police. After years of working with investigators, Carter told me he had dreamed this announcement would come. But the arrest of Richard Allen was not exactly how Carter had imagined it. What went through your mind when you learned that he was in custody?
Empty. I felt pretty empty. It wasn't what I anticipated it to be, Bob. It was a bit overwhelming, quite frankly, at least initially. And it caused me to really go back in time and try to understand the magnitude of what's just happened.
When you spoke to Abby and Libby's families, how did they respond?
They didn't really know what to say, and it was that feeling of after all of these years, we heard what we wanted to hear. Now what? How are we supposed to feel? I think they were pleased because remember, we don't tell the family much more than the rest of the world knows. We can't. So they had the same questions that everyone else has.
There are lots of questions because the Carroll County prosecutor filed a request at the courthouse to keep records in the murder case sealed. That includes the probable cause affidavit, a document that would help explain why police believe Richard Allen committed the murders of 2 teenagers. And that document is almost always made public once a defendant is arrested. Why is information in this case, why is the probable cause affidavit not released right now?
Once the prosecutor made the decision to do that and the judge signed that document, it took it completely out of our hands. I believe in the probable cause. I've read it multiple times. I believe in that probable cause, and I believe in its outcome. So I think in some semblance of a short period of time, will be up to the judge, of course, up to the courts. They will release that probable cause affidavit. I understand the question, and that answer will come in due time.
Was there a request by Indiana State Police to keep it sealed?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Do you support keeping it sealed, or do you believe that it should be released?
I think it should be released, but I also think there's value in a period of time to keep it sealed. Again, in time, the strategy will be clear.
13 News asked the state police superintendent if he believes anyone else participated in the murders and if another arrest in the case might be coming. Do you anticipate there could be other arrests in this case?
There always could be other arrests with any case. It depends upon what we learn.
He did not directly answer either of those questions, and he also chose his words very carefully when I asked about this video on the Monon High Bridge. Police say Libby German secretly took the video on her cell phone on the day of the murders, and the video also captured a man's voice. Indiana State Police said this man was a person of interest, a prime suspect in the murders of Abby and Libby. Is Richard Allen the man who was captured in that video?
That answer will be known sometime in the near future.
While Carter won't talk right now about the evidence, he is very confident that police have identified the killer. He has not spoken directly to Richard Allen since his arrest, but he did speak to him indirectly at a press conference nearly 6 years ago, just days after police found the victims' bodies in these woods.
Somebody knows. And if you're watching, we'll find you.
Did you find that person?
We did. We did.
Still ahead, the conversation continues with State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, including how many investigators it took to crack this case.
I've never seen anything like this in my entire career.
And the important detour he took on his way to announce an arrest in the Delphi murders. We'll tell you where he went. Welcome back to our 13 News special on the Delphi murders arrest.
Before the break, we heard from Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter on the reaction to this arrest and why so much information is still sealed from public view.
Our Bob Siegel now with more on the unprecedented scope of this nearly 6-year investigation and also the surprising stop that Carter made the morning of that news conference.
In the nearly 2,100 days since 2 teenagers were found murdered in Delphi, the case has attracted investigators and detectives from local, state, and federal agencies who all have tried to solve the same question: who killed Abby and Libby?
Do you have an idea how many individuals, how many investigators have participated in this case and in an attempt to lead to an arrest?
Hundreds over time.
Are you aware of any other cases that have had that many individuals participate from an investigative standpoint?
Bob, I'm in a year and a half or so, I'll finish my 40th year. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career. I think one of the reasons is because it's captured the attention of the world, because it's Everytown USA. It's Everytown USA. It's your daughter and it's mine. It's her friend and it's my daughter's friend. I think that's one of the reasons that it's captured the attention of really the globe.
But there are other unsolved homicides in Indiana, in small towns very similar to Delphi, some involving children even younger than Abby and Libby, cases that have received far less attention than this one. Following an arrest in Delphi, Carter said those cases are also very much on his mind, and he mentioned one in particular.
I want to talk about Flora.
He's talking about a deadly house fire in the town of Flora, just 10 miles from the murder scene in Delphi. The fire happened 6 years ago inside this house, trapping 4 young sisters who all died. Investigators say the fire was arson. The deaths are homicides. On the day of this press conference to announce an arrest in the Delphi murder case, Doug Carter says this is where he came first, to visit this crime scene, which is also still under investigation by Indiana State Police.
I sat across the street in that gravel lot and looked at that house that has the same exact remnants of a fire that we saw now almost 6 years ago this month. Boarded windows and black soot on the outside, and it just broke my heart that it was still there because I hadn't seen it in some time. The cases the investigations are very different, but the tragic outcome is the same when there's loss of life. And I hope that one day we can do the same thing, but we have to hear from people. And I hope that one day we will.
State police say they have not gotten many tips on who set the fire that killed these girls, but tips continue to pour in on Delphi. Tens of thousands of tips before the arrest, hundreds more after, during an investigation that Carter says is still ongoing after more than 5.5 years.
Did you think it would take this long to get an arrest?
That's a tough question to answer. This has ebbed and flowed for me. I was confident we would get an arrest, and I had hoped that it would be in a reasonable amount of time. But that reasonable amount of time grew to be longer than I thought.
Have you ever had doubts and worries that there would not be an arrest in this case?
I did, but I fought it. It's haunted me. Yes, I have. And then I'd pick up the phone and I'd call one of those detectives and say, hey, it's me, how you doing today? And I'd hang up that phone and I'd think, oh man, they don't feel that way. So I would be at peace again.
Are you at peace right now?
Yes. I see the culmination of extraordinary effort and hurt and pain in the community that will begin now hopefully to heal. But again, we're not done. We are not done. We're not going to leave that community until this is over.
Carter says he believes more information about the actual murders, including evidence that led to Richard Allen's arrest, will be publicly released within just a matter of weeks.
He says it will be both helpful and very painful because it's going to force the families and also the Delphi community to revisit the pain and trauma that they've experienced that will never go away.
We haven't ever given up, and you guys haven't given up on us, and we're going to keep pushing all the way.
We'll hear from the families of Abby and Libby, who've always held on to hope their killer will be caught. For Abby and Libby's families, the arrest marks the end of one painful chapter and now the beginning of a new one as they wait for justice.
Our Emily Longnecker now with how they've worked to keep Abby and Libby's memories alive.
It's something they've lived with every day for almost 6 years. Along the way, the families of Abby and Libby sharing with us what it was like to wake up every day knowing the person responsible for the girls' murders was still out there.
They never gave up hope or stopped praying, telling themselves with every day that passed.
We still keep positive that today could be the day.
Today's the day.
That's the phrase the families of Libby German and Abby Williams said to themselves every day for almost 6 years, believing that one day they'd be saying it after investigators arrested a person responsible for the murders of Abby and Libby. That day finally came when police called them to say they had a person in custody.
That's why we said never stop searching anywhere, because we didn't know where he was.
Libby's grandparents Mike and Becky Patty spoke Monday following a news conference where Indiana State Police announced they had arrested Richard Allen, a longtime Delphi resident who worked at the local CVS, charging him with the girls' murders.
I don't know the gentleman personally at all.
Turns out, though, the Pattys did have contact with Allen, confirming that at some point since the murders, he had processed photos for them at CVS, but didn't charge them.
That is accurate.
Okay, and that he didn't charge the family when they came in to claim the photos?
That is correct.
The interaction between these grandparents and the man now accused of killing their granddaughter and her friend Abby. Confirmation about what investigators and even the families have believed at times over the years, that the killer was hiding in plain sight.
I feel very strongly that there's a very good chance that it was somebody from the area that knew this area at one time.
That's Abby's mom, Anna Williams, speaking to 13 News 4 years after the girls' murders. Williams chose not to talk after police announced the recent arrest of Allen, but she's spoken several times in the past about the loss of her only child.
My heart's still breaking.
That's Williams just 6 months after the girls' deaths. Back then, holding on to the hope that an arrest would come at any time.
I'd like to be able to have a little bit of happiness come Christmas time this year, knowing that nobody else is ever going to have to go through what we went through, and that this person isn't still out there.
But Christmas that first year came and went, with no breaks in the case. What followed were days, weeks, and then years of what should have been other milestones in Abby and Libby's lives. Learning to drive, going to the prom, graduating high school. All moments never realized.
As tough as their first day of school, everybody is feeling what we're feeling as a group.
Social media, the posts, the kids going to prom, or, the various things that kids do, and you get their license and they post pictures of it, well, we didn't get to enjoy that, and Libby didn't get to partake and have that.
Instead, every year around the time of the girls' deaths, the families held a food drive. They also built a park in Abby and Libby's memory.
I think of Libby's laugh every morning, and I imagine all of the really great things that she would be doing right now.
Libby's older sister, Kelsey, was the one who dropped the girls off at the trail that day and was the last person to see Abby and Libby alive.
That's something I live with every day.
Kelsey has spoken several times over the years about the loss of her little sister.
You have a lot of regret in that, and that is also part of the reason why I keep pushing so hard.
For Kelsey, that push included studying forensics and psychology at Purdue.
I have a mission now. That mission is to get this case solved.
But even as 5 years passed with still no answers, the families of Abby and Libby continued to push forward, getting up every day, knowing the person responsible for the murders was still out there, continuing to share the girls' stories and their journey through the grief of losing them, hoping at some point someone would call in the one tip that would help solve the case.
We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to keep doing what we're doing, but we have to. We have to keep looking for justice and finding justice, and we're just going to keep pushing forward and doing this every year that we have to.
Finally, last week, it seemed like the first step towards finding that justice for Abby and Libby had arrived. Their families had a face and a name, Richard M. Allen, to put with the nightmares that have kept them up at night for the past 5.5 years.
I don't feel like I thought I would. I've always said that I would be screaming on the rooftops, but we're not. It's sad. While there's somebody that's been arrested, our lives for 5.5 years have been in a search, and that's what we've done. And you get up and it's like, oh, we're not doing that anymore. So we're all just kind of feeling our way and figuring out what our purpose is now. What do we do next? How do we help?
The answers to those questions will likely be answered in the coming days and months.
This is another chapter in this whole story that in our lives.
A chapter that's still being written to a story that started on a cold February day when the families of Abby Williams and Libby German learned monsters aren't just the stuff of make-believe. Sometimes they might look like the person walking towards you on a bridge in the woods.
Now that we have an arrest, what's next? The key dates ahead in this case, and the plea still very much open to the public.
Now that Richard Allen is in custody, what's next? He has pleaded not guilty to murder charges, and he awaits trial in a state facility because there have been concerns for his safety.
We also know this case is going to be handled by an Allen County judge. The judge in Carroll County recused himself on November 3rd. Allen has a hearing coming up on January 13th. That's just 1 month short of the 6-year mark since these 2 girls disappeared. Right now, his trial is set for March 20th.
As you've heard, investigators have made it very clear this is not over yet. In fact, right now, they're still seeking any and all tips in the case. So if you know anything, the tip line is right there on your screen.
Thanks so much for joining us. As always, you can stay constantly updated on this case by heading to WTHR.com/Delphi.
We also have extended coverage on WTHR+. Thanks for watching. Good night.